Thank you, everybody, for joining the VCI group interoperability session. This is a teaser session, if you will, an overview of some of the information that you can expect to get when you go for your VCI interoperability certification. And you'll have the ability to do that in an online session, April 21st and 23rd, 4 hours on each of those 2 days. Details will be up on the VCI group website shortly. Or you can also attend the session in Las Vegas in person, and that'll be June 17th in Las Vegas. Again, the details will be up on the VCI group website.
I can't date.
Mark, are you asking a question or are you just not muted? Okay, we're going to take that as I was just not muted. So for the VCI group interoperability certification, we've had a lot of requests for industry certifications, non-manufacturer based, focused on the visual communications industry and the things that are important to the visual communications industry. With the VCI group interoperability certification, what will be covered will be an overview of the visual communications market. We're going to talk about the evolution of visual communications industry. We're going to highlight the defining moments that grew or changed the market, and we're going to explain the market as it stands today. Additionally, we're going to talk about who's who and what do they do. So we'll be talking about Cisco, Polycom, Life-Size, Video, Huawei, Avaya/Radvision/Aethra. We've had a lot of people purchasing other people here. Sony, Microsoft, Econo, Pexip, BlueJeans, and Skype. We may talk about a few others, but basically we're going to give you the overview of the top players in the market. In addition to that, we're going to talk about leading cloud and mobility trends as it applies to visual communications. There are lots of impacts on visual communications with these trends, and we're going to talk specifically to those. And then also integration with VoIP and IP telephony solutions. So the interoperability certification will cover those topics. At the end of the session, you'll have the ability to take the online test and earn your certification right there. So we look forward to everybody signing up for that. Again, watch on the VCI group website for that information. Today, we're going to just talk a little bit about interoperability and whether or not it's still an issue today. So our expectations are that we can immediately communicate with pretty much anyone, anywhere, anytime, from any device, except that we all know that sometimes it just doesn't work. So it's not like the early days where we had to have the same device on the same network, and it sometimes worked and sometimes didn't. We're way beyond that. But if we became, visual communications became commercially viable in the late 80s, why is there still a question today on, am I going to be able to connect? Our smartphones have been around for less than half as long, but I can pretty much make a telephone call from that anywhere, anytime I want, and browse the internet. So sometimes I don't even have to push the buttons, depending on whether Siri recognizes what I'm saying or not. So if I'm at the office or United Club or a rental car, then, or even at Starbucks, I expect to be able to make a phone call or join a video conference or view, a webinar without assistance using my phone or my laptop or my tablet. And so interoperability is a key component on making sure that we can do that from any device, anywhere. So the first thing we want to do is make sure that everybody on this call is paying attention. So go to your meeting controls and use the chat box and tell us where you are today. We'll give you about 10 seconds to do that.
The response is pouring in.
And if you're not muted, please mute yourself until you're ready to ask a question, which you can feel free to do so at any time.
Note to folks that if you're unmuted, we can hear you typing.
We can hear you typing, and we can hear you mumbling as well.
All right. So we've got Donna in Las Vegas, Nevada. We knew that. She's part of the group here. Todd Hughes in You didn't say, you said Western Kentucky, so I guess that's Kentucky. Ken Kahn is from right outside Houston. Tony is in Peekskill, New York. William McMullen in Houston. Ron Wilson in Bakersfield, California. Mark Cleveland State is at Cleveland State. And Todd Hughes is in Bowling Green.
And I'm Jules, and I'm in Santa Rosa Valley, which is in Southern California. So,
and I'm Theo. I'm here in nice, warm Chicago.
All right. So thank you, everybody, for participating. Today, we're going to talk about interoperability and whether it's still an issue today. So we're going to start with where we are now. We're going to talk about the information age. We're going to talk about visual communications in the information age, and we're going to talk about interoperability. There are many industry analysts who have a lot to say about where we're at today. And so Frost & Sullivan is one of them. Their focus is on the fact that it's a virtual workplace and new technology tools need to support remote meetings and collaboration. So they recommend looking at different vendors, increasing productivity and building relationships to increase your effectiveness, right? All of this stuff is stuff that we've heard before. We know that the focus is on lowering cost. We know that the focus is on improved training. And we all know that usage supports the outcomes. So we all know that all of these things come together. So what does interoperability have to do with that? Well, we all know that if somebody can't pick up a device and connect, that they're not going to adopt it, they're not going to use it, you're not going to get your value out of it. So interoperability, of course, remains the key component to making sure that any tools that you put in place are successful. So it's interesting, though, that Frost & Sullivan, Gartner, and the other industry analysts, they're really saying you can go out there, you can find everything you need, you can get voice, video, web sharing, everything that you need, and they're saying that you can outsource it or you can bring it in-house, and it just seems like they're not asking for that much. Actually, they're asking for a lot, but they're still skipping that interoperability portion. So if we look at where we're at today, what I'd like to know from all of you out there is, do you actually think one or more communication solution providers can offer you everything you need? Can you get video and voice endpoints for fixed rooms? So go to your chat box and tell us, what do you think? Can you get video call routing, possibly integrated with your voice call routing? Can you also get multi-point conferencing for both voice and video? Do your software programs support management of both your voice and video network? Can you get connectivity between what you've purchased for your own solution as well as the people external to your organization? Can you integrate your voice, video, and data sharing? And can you connect without needing assistance? Tell me, is that a yes or no? Can you do all of those things?
Well, so far we've got 4 no's. I think I would add my own no's as a 5th. And one comment, now that Microsoft dropped Skype Kit support, so there's another no there. Well, no yeses, Jules.
So no yeses. Well, that's a resounding vote for we're still having interoperability issues. So let's talk about where we've been and where we are now. Obviously, the agricultural age was around for a long time, starting about 2 million BC when it changed from hunting and gathering to farming, right? But there's still innovations today. You still have organically grown and genetically mutated wheat, which everybody will tell you is bad for you and don't eat it. You still get advances in technology for agriculture. The last thing I read about was actually pumps with force field technology in them. That was pretty interesting. The industrial age, of course, started later than that. It could be argued that it started in the 1500s, but most people accept that it started with the steam engine around 1720. And there, then went through the cotton gin, the Model T Ford, right? Lots and lots of innovations that happened a lot faster than the agricultural innovations. And of course, then we jump into the digital age, where you could say the digital age started back in the 40s with the transistor. although it seems to have morphed into what we would consider the information age. And you might say that started in the 60s with Olivetti's personal desktop PC, which was interesting that it was back then, and actually the picture phone came into being back then. So what's happening here? The question is, right, have the ages actually ended? Doesn't seem like it. It seems like the ages start and then they get built upon by other ages. The speed of innovation is increasing, so each step forward seems like we take the abilities, we build on what was before, and we use these new ages to then put things out faster. And then the digital age, of course, has become the information age. Although it was the digital age, most of the innovations and things that we've done in the information age, in the digital age, have contributed to information, either storing information or making information more readily available. So go back to your chat box, when do you think the information age will end? Or will it never end?
I've got a couple of nevers. I think this is a trick question, actually.
Well, there's no wrong answer, so a little bit it's a trick question.
Oh, Todd Hughes, all good things come to an end.
Oh, Todd, that's so defeatist.
And we've got a bunch of nevers and a never ending.
All right. So I think that things are going to continue forward. I'm not sure we see a specific end to things. However, there definitely are things that are huge milestones that impact the different ages. So let's talk about the things that contribute in the information age: innovation, change, and communication. Those are the key components on the information age. So if we look at what's happened over time, right? Back in the early days of the information age, right, after the transistor, we get Olivetti and their PC, we get ARPANET, right, which we all know leads forward to the internet, and NLS, right, the online system for browsing and editing information. All of these things are key contributors to everything that we do today. Then, of course, in the 70s, we get some big players that jump into the game. IBM, Intel, Apple all make a huge investment and a huge focus on what can we do with this information. The focus at that point is primarily at business, not at consumers, because they're going to the people with money. But we get Usenet, we get FTP, we get TCP/IP, all significant in the information age. And then as we move forward into the 80s, now we're getting more focus on consumer markets, right? We want desktop PCs, DNS becomes something that gets used. And then right in the 90s, laptops, cell phones, HTML browsers, World Wide Web becomes something that everybody knows about, that everybody's heard about, that everybody's talking about. And wow, internet boom, right? In the 80s and 90s, the growth and innovation was seen by the public. So until then, it was primarily business, but now all of a sudden we're seeing all this stuff that's public facing, and everybody's getting behind it, and consumers start to drive the market. We get smartphones, social media, Twitter, right, in the 2000s. Again, continued growth, tablets. The information age, everything built on the thing before. So all of these things now, we've got laptops, we've got smartphones, we've got tablets. They all have to talk to each other. And it's the one thing that we've been struggling with. But what we haven't talked about is, how does visual communications play into the information age? So again, visual communications is about communication, but it's always been about the application. It's always been about, how am I using it? Am I using it for distance learning purposes so I can participate in a class, or so I can teach a class to people that aren't necessarily where I'm at? Can I speak to a medical specialist? Can I bring a specialist into a court proceeding without them traveling? Can I have a meeting? Can I keep in touch with my customers? Can I fix a problem without having to ship something all the way around the world? It's always been about the application. And part of what's driven the increased adoption of it has been the quality. So if we look at where visual communications has been, right, we got picture phone back in the 60s and 70s. Wasn't hugely successful, but it was out there, and it is one of the significant things that really started the visual communications market. In the 80s, we looked a lot at ISDN video, and the word codec is actually something that became known in the 80s. People started talking about coders, decoders. H.261 was primarily what was being used, so it was a lower quality, but H.261 is significant because it's a standard. And that was the first step for visual communications becoming interoperable. PictureTel and CLI actually realized they can't just do proprietary things. Things have to speak to each other. Then as we jump into the 90s, toward the end of the 90s, we get IP video, right? We get Polycom wading into the market, being one of the first to put IP actually into the product. We got H.263 and 30 frames per second, improved quality, where people are saying, you know what, now it might be worthwhile to do video because the quality is a little better, it's getting a little more stable. But also, See You, See Me, and some other applications started to come out in the 90s. Consumers started to get involved. It wasn't just about, am I going to go into this very expensive room that's hard to book? It's, hey, I might be able to use See You, See Me to meet with you. And by the way, I can also see my kid at college, and we can talk to grandma, and there's all kinds of great applications now. We've got other players entering the market there. And then we continue to take that step forward. The quality leap, HD video, right? Now I'm at home and I'm watching the football package and I'm seeing this HD video and I'm wondering, why am I not seeing this on our video conferences? Well, great. It drove the market. We got HD video incorporated into to our video conferencing. People started to get pretty excited about the quality of it. Over time, of course, the compression improves. Right now I need less bandwidth for this. Lifesize, of course, is one of the leaders there, their founders being from the market. Video has jumped into the game, Cisco, but Skype becomes a pretty common and very successful consumer grade video that everybody jumped on board and said, hey, we can do this. It's not hard. We can figure this out. So again, late 90s, 2000s, we see growth and innovation seen by the public. It's important because that helps drive the market. And of course, now, where are we? We have mobility issues. We've got to accommodate not just people who are considered mobile workers, but people who aren't considered mobile workers who work mobily. So they have soft clients, we've got WebRTC, we've got better compression, all of these things moving forward. So when we look at all of this, what do we say? Well, that's all great, but does it all talk to each other? And that's the question we're here today, because when it does, we have unified communications. And that's what we're all moving forward with. So if we look at what have the changes been, well, back in 2000, there was maybe 70,000 devices connected to the internet. But you get to 2014, and there's more than 8.7 billion devices connected to the internet. And by 2018, which is just 4 years from now, it's going to be pretty much double that. So as we're looking at that, what we notice is initially what's connected to the internet is a very small percentage of visual communication devices. Today, almost half of the devices connected to the internet can do video. And once we get 4 years down the road, almost everything's going to have that capability. So it's important because interoperability now is not just a, hey, it's something that we need to struggle with. It's a necessity. It's got to happen. So here's a question. Go back to your chat box. How many devices do you personally connect to the internet for your own work and home use? So not for the other people that you might support, but how many devices do you actually connect to the internet? And how many of those are used for video? We'll give you about 15 seconds on this one. I can see Theo County.
I can't count that high.
Yes.
All right, so Donna's got at least a dozen. I think she might win. William, 8 and 3. That's 8 total devices connected to the internet, 3 for video. Todd, 60-ish. Oh, he might win. Tony, 7 devices and 2 for video. Mark, Many. Good answer, Mark. And from Ron Wilson, 7 or so. Ken Kahn, 60-ish. Or he's questioning Todd. And Mark has 5, and we've got 6 and 2 from G. Sardo. Is that Gordon? G. Sardo. All right.
So from this, you can see nobody put 1, right? Everybody's got more than 1. I've got 6 on this desk alone, and 5 of them are for video. So it's not even a question anymore. We get a device, we know that we're going to be using the internet for some type of connectivity. We know that we're either going to browse the internet, we're going to use it to connect to our VPN, we're going to use it for voice communication, we're going to use it for video communication, we're going to use it to be able to print something at home while we're on the road. We're going to do whatever it is that we need to do with it. It's not even a question anymore. So from an interoperability standpoint, we still have to address the same things that we've always been addressing. And the question is it easier now or harder, right? Some things are easier because they happen automatically, but some things are a little bit harder. Gartner says the digital industrial economy will be built on the foundation of the nexus of forces and the Internet of Everything by combining the physical world and the virtual. Gartner has never been able to say anything without being convoluted, so let me tell you what that means. So the nexus of forces means there's a combination and integration of cloud, social collaboration, mobility, and information, right? So between cloud, between social networks, between being mobile workers and the information that's being communicated with them, right? All of those things are contributing factors. The Internet of Everything, in case you're not familiar with that term, didn't come from Cisco, although they did a great marketing program with it. The Internet of Everything is actually the idea that devices are going to send information through the Internet without human interaction. So it could be your toothbrush sending you a message saying you need to change the head. It could be all of the computers that are in your car today. It could be a heart monitor, or it could be your printer telling you it needs ink. So that is the concept of the Internet of Everything. So if all of this information combined with cloud, social collaboration, and mobility are the future, and actually I think they're the now, then everything needs to communicate with everything in an end user self-service model. Interoperability is about the end user being able to pick up a device, make a call, make a connection without having to call an administrator to make the call for them, without having to call the IT guy to set it up for them, without having somebody waste their time monitoring the meeting. They don't do it with phone calls. Interoperability is not doing that with data calls or video calls either. So let's look at these items that make or break it. So network started for visual communications with POTS and the picture phone, moved to ISDN and then to IP. So now it's primarily IP. We expect it to be IP. We actually still have gateways to POTS and ISDN for some legacy things that are out there, and certainly for handoff for audio communications if it hasn't moved to VoIP yet. So we've got that capability, and that can happen fairly transparently on the network as long as it's set up correctly from the beginning. But the thing that can impact it is dialing. How am I going to dial? Am I dialing an IP address? Am I dialing a NAT, right? Am I using URI? Do I have a telephone number? We all have 555 numbers, right? And then, DNS is important so that we can make sure that if we're using URI or anything else, that we're actually pointing the address at the correct thing. Encryption continues to be a struggle for everybody. If I'm using commercial products, do I have a secure call? Is it encrypted? Yes, of course, I need it to be for sensitive information, but now all my users are coming back and saying, hey, I have these consumer products. I have Skype, I have FaceTime, I have Google Hangouts, and we know that somebody can break into that safe. So what happens, right? How do we address that? And now with these new players on the market, and some not so new, Blue Jeans isn't new, but Econo and Pexip are, and there are other products as well that are designed for interoperability. Their message is, I'm coming out to you, I'm going to bring you a product, and it's going to allow you to connect your H323 endpoints and your SIP endpoints, and oh, by the way, Microsoft Link and your Skype, and everybody's going to be able to connect through this great thing that we have in the middle. But what nobody tells you, and the question that you have to ask is, what happens when I connect that way? Is it actually secure? Even Polycom, when they go from SIP to H323, isn't a secure call. They're secure H323 to H323 or SIP to SIP, but not when it's transcoded. So you have to be careful, and you have to ask those questions, and you have to know, because the CEO who came in and gave you such a hard time about wanting to use Skype for the call, he's still going to yell at you and fire you if somebody hacked into that and got sensitive information. So you have to be able to have that information right up front. And firewall traversal continues to be a struggle for everybody. It's not so much that we don't understand that it's there. It's that sometimes your service provider can put it in place. Sometimes a simple network change gets you routed to the wrong place, and it can impact your calls if it's not set up correctly. Many people understand that firewall traversal is a known and useful method for getting the communication from one place to another, but sometimes it's difficult to get the people who provide the authorization to do it to understand that it is secure and that it is something that's appropriate, because everybody's concerned, of course, about protecting their communication and protecting their data. So those are the challenges that we run into. So, the devices that we use today typically have the types of communication that can speak to each other. They're using SIP. WebRTC is the new hot chick at the prom, and so that and H.265 standardization that's being worked on now are the things that people are looking at for better compression and all of those great things. But so when does the device matter? Well, it matters when I can't connect, and then I have to go to a different device. So interoperability means I can walk into my video system and make a call, and I can have somebody join from a telephone, and somebody else can join from their smartphone, and somebody can join from their soft client on their PC, and somebody can watch the stream on their tablet, and I don't have to get anybody to set this up for me. So the question is, does that actually work now? It can work now. It's hard to maintain the environment, but it can work now. So end users don't care how am I connected. They don't care about SIP. They don't care about H323, and they don't care about WebRTC. All they care about is, how do I connect to it, and can I do it intuitively every time without assistance? Sharing data is a big piece of that. So let's ask the question again. Can you conduct calls now in the environment that you have at your organization using voice, data, video, any combination of that, without needing IT or other assistance? And if you're the support person, can your users do that without needing assistance?
And while those votes are coming in, I want to echo Ken Kahn's comment to everyone. Jules, she just said, amen. Users just want it to be easy and dependable.
Exactly. That's exactly what we all want.
We've got a not yet. Got 2 not yets and 3 no's so far. From Tony, she elaborated and said, we've got a help desk center that helps this for us.
And the larger organizations often have that. We're finding, what we're hearing from the field is that the whole self-service spiel that is being put out there by different sales organizations is a great spiel. That's what everybody wants. However, even the Blue Jeans and the other service providers that are cloud-based that have been successful find that there is a lot of hand-holding that they're doing with their clients anyway. It can be as simple as, hey, I haven't done this for a few months. Can you walk me through it one more time? They don't want to go watch somebody's video of how to do it. Or it could be, hey, I've got somebody really important that isn't connecting, and they may be very technical or not technical at all, and I need you to help them get onto this call right now. So we're still finding that those things are happening even in our supposed self-service environment.
Well, all the votes are in, and the most helpful one, oh, wait a minute, we've got a yes from Tom Kuhn.
All right.
We've got a couple of not yets and not entirely's, and the rest are no's.
Okay. So that gives you your answer on, is interoperability still an issue today? The answer is yes, it is. So an environment can be set up. It can be set up for these things. But there's always going to be some challenge right now when we go external to our own environment. And that's part of the challenge of what we have to address with interoperability. We might have a mixed environment internally, and we might be able to address that. But once we step outside of that, we can't guarantee that our business partner on the other side doesn't have firewall issues. And we can't guarantee that they're going to be willing to download a soft client or do something else in order to connect to our meeting. But we are making steps. It is getting easier. So when you come to the VCI group interoperability certification training, we're going to talk about all of the players and how close are they to interoperability, which ones actually are trying to address the issue, which ones are succeeding, which ones are failing, and also, what the capabilities are. Can they actually provide something to you? So just as a reminder, you're going to go to the VCI group website in a week or so, and you're going to look for information on how to register for the online session for the VCI group interoperability certification, where we're going to get into details vendor by vendor. Or you're going to register to come on site June 17th, which is the day before the exhibit hall opens at InfoComm in Las Vegas this year, and attend this one-day session there. So the online session is 2 4-hour sessions to get your certification, or the Las Vegas session is 1 day on site. So at this point, let's open it up for any questions. We've gone through a lot of information, and I know I tend to speak as one long sentence, so I'm sure there's got to be a question out there.
Well, Jules, I'll get things started because I've got a question. Would you say that the measuring stick of being able to make whatever calls we want without the assistance of the help desk or a third party is the measure, the kind of the end user measuring stick for interoperability?
It absolutely is, because the fact of it is we don't have secretaries anymore. We have very few administrators anymore. And so professionals are expected to be able to do more on their own. The IT staffs are not, do not have the body count needed to act as technical admins for organizations. They're typically running, they typically have a primary responsibility and secondary responsibilities. So in small to medium organizations, it may be 1 or possibly 2 guys that do everything, and they're not really experts. They know as much as they need to know to get by, and then they have to figure it out as they go. They tend to be more creative than people give them credit for. It's pretty impressive. In the larger organizations, you typically have a primary responsibility and then possibly backup responsibility. So you might be in the group that's responsible for the network, and these are router and server guys more often than not now, and they work with the network providers and they work with the network internally. They might be application guys that work with servers. They might be voice guys who have to interact with the other groups, but they specifically focus on voice communications. Or they might be video guys. Again, they have to interact with the other groups, but they're specifically focused on video communications and making that work. We're still seeing those 4 distinct groups within IT organizations in large and super large companies and organizations. And the overlap on that tends to be the video guys back up the voice guys, and the voice guys back up the video guys, and the application guys back up each other, and they don't want anybody to touch anything. And the network guys, they'll kill you if you touch anything. So
good.
You have to watch.
That's a good answer. Thank you. We've got a couple more questions in from the rest of the group. The first one from Ken. Why do you think the VC industry hasn't modeled itself after the phone industry? For example, people buy the kind of phone they want and the service they want and can call anyone. I think that's a great example. I think we even used a little bit of that in our video teaser for this. And then Mark also has a follow-up question. Now that Microsoft has ended the Skype kit support, where does this leave Skype, H323, SIP, WebRTC, Interop, and especially if you're not a link shop?
Mm-hmm. So to the first part of the question, visual communications started more like the voice industry, probably because of the network services involved, and transitioned to try to bridge voice and data. The difference is on the voice side of the house, you have to be up 100% of the time. On the data side of the house, and especially in the early days, although the interruptions were painful, they were acceptable. If your email was a little bit late, as much as that was painful, didn't really, it typically wasn't a critical thing like having a down phone system. Video, moving to a data network, but needing that reliability on the voice side was challenging for people. Now, as it's moved forward, the reason it hasn't modeled itself like the voice side of it is the complexity with compression. So while voice actually had some of these same issues, AT&T, Nortel, and a few others would interpret the communication standards differently. So when you set up your ISDN with AT&T, you actually had a profile for it. When you set up your ISDN with Nortel, you had a profile for it. Before that, it was just even a T1. You had a profile for it. You had a profile for it. The way that they handled it, in-band and out-of-band signaling, was different. And the PBX providers were the ones that had the onus of dealing with that. It's similar for the video communications industry. It's a different interpretation. And SIP is interesting because everybody likes to throw that around. SIP is a wrapper, and everybody interprets it differently, which means that even though I say I'm SIP and Donna says she's SIP, our two SIPs might not be exactly the same, even though we both say we're complying to whatever might be defined as a standard out there. So that's been part of the challenge, is getting the standards to come together, but also video communication, because it takes up so much more bandwidth and because it has specific compression needs. And once you get into multi-site, it can be pretty crazy. And then now you put your data sharing on top of it. It's a little more complicated than the voice communication. What was the second part of the question, Theo?
The second part was, and this was from Mark in Cleveland, excuse me, now that Microsoft has ended the Skype kit support, where does this leave Interop between Skype, H323, SIP, and WebRTC, and especially if you're not a link shop?
Right. So the same thing's always going to be true, whether it's data, voice, or video. People abandon products and they're going to fall off. If you look at it today, many of the infrastructure products don't support H.261 because people aren't using those codecs anymore. Even H.263 can be questionable, even though there's still a lot of it out there. It can be questionable whether or not that's going to be supported. So with Skype falling off, yes, it's probably will not be one of the things that moves forward from an interoperability standpoint. WebRTC is what everybody's talking about right now going forward. Microsoft Link has been one of the challenges for the visual communications player because Microsoft is not really considered a visual communications company. And Link is interesting because Link has not typically been something that's been able to connect until very recently into other visual communications. So going forward, all of the major players have said link interoperability is important, and we're gonna provide that. But Skype, no. The question is going to be, and this is something that we're not going to see until the products come out later this year, when we connect to Link, is it actually going to be secure? And that's going to be one of the big questions on, is this something that can be used for secure communications or not?
Mark also brings up an interesting point, and he says, I think it'd be useful for people to understand and be able to parse out technical interop issues as opposed to competitive interop issues. I think,
Yes.
and I would add to that, if we wanted to get even a little bit more fine-grained, there is interop issues associated just with the end user being able to make that call without any help, and that's both it's related to technical and competitive edges as well.
Yes, it absolutely is. So they are two different things to look at. Many of the people involved in the industry are technical by nature, even on the sales side, and they get excited about the different little technical nuances, and they use them as sell points, and they use them as differentiators. And in the end, we still are trying to get back to, can the end user pick up the phone, pick up our smartphone and make a call, or open the app and make a call from it in an intuitive way? The interface is not going to be the same. But to be fair, the interfaces aren't the same on the phones. I can't take my, the IP phone that I have on my desk here over to Theo's office and plug it in. It's not going to work. Well, it might work. It actually is just looking for an internet connection, and I have a hosted service provider, but it may or may not work. But I can't take it into a Cisco building and plug it in, and it won't work there. And so if I look at my telephone here, I have specific buttons that mean certain things. The keypad's the same, but how I get a line might be different. How I access an outside line might be different. If I'm using my iPhone and you're using your Android, we're going to see differences there. So there's always going to be that different interface. The question is it going to be intuitive enough that it doesn't matter? The features are what we're looking for. Can I make a call? Can I add another person to the call? Can I share a presentation or a document of some sort? Can I see what somebody else is sharing? Basic feature functionality. That's where we're going to define, is it interoperable enough? Right? Just like the phones. They're interoperable enough.
Great. Are there any other questions out there? Those that have been typed in, we've gone through.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining today. And we really appreciate your participation, and please be more rowdy on the next call. And hopefully we'll see you in April.
So long, everyone.